TDD information meeting. I'd particularly like to welcome our friends and neighbors from the Pines that are here. But Krast, who's the town council president, welcome. Do you have any other council members that are here right now?
Jan Lowe.
Jan, good to have you here.
Four of us, I don't see Tammy yet.
There's Tammy.
Tammy's here.
Welcome, Tammy. Thank you for coming, and we have Councilwoman Yorkis and Town Council Vice President Candace Peterson Smith, Clerk Treasurer Hunt, and Councilwoman, what's your name again?
Councilperson.
Councilperson, okay, Councilperson Patrolman Mallett. So thank you everyone for being here, and Councilman Jeff Benson, who's also our RDA rep. This is a open meeting for people to learn about where we're at in the TDD process. And so I will turn it over to Beverly Shores TDD rep, Jeff Benson. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you, David. All I'm going to do is hand this over to the RDA. So Dave Wellman is here with his team, and I'm going to have him get started. How you doing? Good to see you. Yeah, thank you all for coming. Lots of friendly faces. Go ahead, Dave.
Thank you, sir. Oh. Well, thanks for coming. Good evening. For those of you who are joining us virtually on Zoom, there's going to be a few people logged in. Please make sure you're muted, and if you have any questions, put them in the chat, and we'll make sure that we get to those in the Q&A portion of the program tonight. So hello, my name is Dave Wellman. I am the Director of Communications for the Northwest Indiana Regional Development Authority, and I'm here tonight with several members of our team, including our new Economic Development Director, AJ Hittner. AJ.
Hi,
and as Dave Reynolds of Policy Analytics, they're our fiscal gurus, and Valerie Burstein from MKSK. They're an urban planning firm that has been instrumental in working with us and various communities around Northwest Indiana to actually draw up the districts. I'd also like to give a shout out to Dave Phelps, Jeff Benson, Bud Krast, Tammy Watkins, for all the work that they put into this. Their input and guidance has been invaluable over the past year, and I look forward to a continued partnership that will enable both communities to achieve their goals and take the best advantage possible of the opportunities presented by the big investment that we've made in commuter rail in Northwest Indiana. Next slide. Now, for those of you who might not be familiar with the RDA, here's a very quick summary. We were created in 2006 with the aim of addressing regional infrastructure needs like the Lake Michigan shoreline, the runway expansion at the Gary Airport. Here in Porter County, our projects include the lakefront and riverwalk in Portage and the attendant environmental cleanup that was done there, as well as the pedestrian walkways on the bridges over 12 and 20. We partnered with INDOT a few years back when they replaced those bridges to add those to the design and make sure people could get across the two highways a lot easier. We have an annual budget of $17.5 million that comes primarily from Northwest Indiana casino tax revenues. And we also receive state funding on a project-by-project basis. Speaking of, for roughly the last 10 years, our focus has been on the expansion of the South Shore. That came in two parts, Westlake and Double Track. As I'm sure everyone's aware, Double Track was largely completed this year, though there is some construction still going on to improve access to Millennium Station. And work continues on the Westlake extension. That's expected to be completed, I keep wanting to say next year, but it's 2025 now, so later this year that will hopefully be done. Together, these projects represent an investment of about $1.5 billion in Northwest Indiana. That includes federal funds, contributions from 14 different local government units, RDA dollars, of course, and money directly from the state of Indiana. The reason that all these entities came together and agreed to make this investment was the growth that it promised to bring. Next slide, please. Thank you. When the RDA, or rather I should say Policy Analytics, crunched the numbers back in 2016, they estimated that doing Westlake and Double Track would bring about $2.5 billion in development to Northwest Indiana along with 11,000 new residents, thousands of new jobs over the next 20 years. That was a really attractive return on investment for the state of Indiana. And I would note that to date, we have $500 million of development already underway that could be attributed to the rail projects. And in fact, that number had just got bigger today. I don't know how many people saw the story in the papers today, but Michigan City has another $200 to $300 million project in the pipeline involving something like 500 new housing units and a supermarket on the site of the old hospital, which is also in their transit development district. So, we're starting to push up toward, $750 million worth of development already. And again, the full rail projects aren't even done yet. But so, we're pretty confident that when we look back in a couple of decades, those projections are going to prove to be low. Next slide, please. And the law was a great return on investment. The 20-year time frame was not as much of a hit with our legislators. So they gave the RDA a tool to speed things up, and that's the Transit Development Districts, or TDDs. TDD is a type of tax increment financing district that's anchored by one of the South Shore stations. The RDA will receive incremental property income tax dollars from the district, which we can use within the boundaries of the TDD to fund infrastructure improvements and provide incentives for development. 10 TDDs have been established so far. The TDD here in Beverly Shores and Pines and the one in South Bend are the two we have left to create on the double track line, the main line. Westlake, we're finished, though Hammond is looking at building a downtown station, so that could eventually be one that we have to put together. And then there's also a transit development district in Valparaiso, or rather a bus station. That's a whole another thing. Yeah, thank you. A TDD offers several potential advantages to a community over the usual ways of incentivizing development. For example, typically a city or a town will use a tax increment financing district to issue bonds, then use the revenue from the district to repay those bonds over time. In the case of the TDD, it would be the RDA doing the borrowing. And as a state agency, we borrow through the Indiana Finance Authority, which means that in many cases we can borrow at a much lower rate than individual cities and towns can, and use the tax dollars that we receive more efficiently than the local or city or town could. Also, any borrowing done by the RDA doesn't count against the municipality's borrowing limit. So, essentially you're getting the state through the RDA to subsidize development in your community. Finally, you get access to the RDA's resources like MKSK, policy analytics. We also work with KPMG. They do financial analysis for us, site-specific stuff. And they can all come together to help analyze individual projects that you're presented with and vet potential developers. Next slide. So let me stop there. I tend to go really fast, so let me slow down, take a pause. Do we have any questions I can answer?
I'm going to put the PDF of in the meeting chat so that people, because they can't see the slides.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
Either I can just stand in front of the screen.
Maybe.
There you go. And it will be posted, everything here, this is being recorded, the video will be on our YouTube channel, this presentation will be available on the RDA's website as well as our TDD website. So everybody will have an opportunity to take as deep a dive into any of this as they want. Okay. Next slide. Let's see. Okay, next piece of paper. So let's go over some of the basics about TDD. What is it? Again, it's a type of tax increment financing district designed to promote transit development, or TOD, because we don't have enough acronyms beginning with T in this whole process. It's a tool that your communities can use to manage and guide development, and it's been designed based on real opportunities and real needs in the community, and to fit with each community's vision of how things should be. It is, it's not just a boundary, it's intended to complement your community's preferred growth pattern. As to what it's not comprehensive planning, it's not a comprehensive plan. It's not going to take any property, it's not a tax increase, And while it's related to the rail projects for obvious reasons, it's not part of Westlake or Double Track specifically. Nikki does all the running of the trains, the construction of the track and station, everything. The RDA is tasked with developing around the stations. So what it is, bottom line, is an economic development tool for communities with direct access to rail. Next slide. So when first created, Transit Development District can be up to half a mile in area. That translates to about 320 acres, which is a little easier for most people to visualize. Statute does allow for the TDD to be increased once, to be expanded once. And that expansion could basically double its size to up to a mile in area or 640 acres. Next slide. This is just a sample, but when they say an area, that area can be any shape. It doesn't just have to be like a circle around the train station. And obviously RDA is especially interested in the parts of the district that are close to the station because that's where your traditional transit-oriented development happens. But we work with each community to include properties that they're interested in seeing developed or redeveloped. So the TDDs can come in some interesting shapes depending on their purpose. As we'll see, the Beverly Shores Pines TDD is a great example of that. Next slide, please. A TDD captures incremental growth in local income and property taxes. To vastly oversimplify, once a TDD is formally established, the year in which it's established becomes the base year. And in subsequent years, that base amount, whatever it was getting at the time the TDD was established, continues to go to the community. But any incremental growth in property and local income tax revenues on top of that base, that's captured by the TDD for the RDA to take and use to, in that TDD, to fund infrastructure projects, development incentives, whatever the community deems is necessary to get the best out of the TDD. Next. And yeah, just importantly, any revenues, I want to emphasize this, any revenues collected within a district can only be spent in that same district. So we can't take your money and spend it in the Porter TDD or the Hammond TDD or anywhere else. It has to be spent here. And second, while the RDA receives funds, we can only spend them in cooperation with the community. We don't have any authority pertaining to land use or zoning or permitting. In fact, as we'll talk about in a bit, the way we're setting things up, any funds that the RDA disperses out of the TDD will go directly to the local government to fund or incentivize specific projects. Next slide. And then once the TDD is established, there'll be what's called a memorandum of agreement between the RDA and the community in question. This will serve as a framework for how the RDA and the RDA and the community will work together. And it's kind of a living document. And so every time a project comes along and we come to agreement on something we're going to do, then that'll be amended to reflect that. So there'll be an amendment put in that basically says, okay, the RDA is going to give X amount out of the TDD, and the community is going to do Y with it. And that'll go through legal processes and votes as per usual to make sure that everybody lives up to their obligations. Next slide. Then once the TDD is established, okay, that was the last slide. So what's the RDA looking at doing in the TDDs? There's three types of assistance we're contemplating. There's grants, loans, and loan guarantees. As I mentioned, before the applicant for the TDD funds must be the local government itself. This is consistent with how the RDA has operated with our grant programs historically. We would have communities come to us with project proposals. For example, Portage came to us with a proposal for the Lakefront and Riverwalk. So RDA staff vetted that proposal and provided a favorable recommendation to the RDA board. The board approved the project, a grant agreement was drafted and signed, and the grant was given to Portage. Well, folks. Then Portage, then Portage went out and handled the project. They did the RFPs, picked the contractors, managed the project, we paid the bills. It'll be similar model for TDD funds. A municipality will come to us with a proposal. Staff will take it in, take a look at it, work with the town, work with developers to address any concerns they might have. And then we'll make a recommendation to our board of directors. If the recommendation is favorable, then they may approve the project. If they approve it, then just like having a grant agreement with our old grant structure, there's the memorandum of agreement, which will again lay out everything that's going to be done. What's the scope of the project? What's the, who's going to be getting what? What's the schedule for disbursement of funds? All those kinds of good things. And then ultimately the RDA will release the funds. But the bottom line is what this ensures is that nothing happens that the community doesn't actually want to happen. This goes through your normal redevelopment processes. It goes through your normal town councils. It's not the RDA coming in and just saying, okay, we're going to plop down a building right here, whether you like it or not. We can't do that. So the second point is that the RDA does have some interests. And the biggest one is prioritizing projects that will grow the increment generated by the district so that even more projects can receive funding. Some of our other goals, such as being the funder of last resort, are also taken from our traditional grant policies. And the goal there is to maximize the impact of the TDD dollars and make sure they get used where they're most needed. Next slide. As to what costs can be covered by the TDD funds, that's all laid out in statute. I'm not going to read the whole slide here, but as you can see, it's a pretty comprehensive list in terms of what the district's funds can be put toward. There's the hard costs, soft costs. So it's, we're pretty broad in how we can apply these funds. Next slide. All right, again, let me pause here. I have to go through these things a little quickly. Are there any questions that either team can answer? Okay. So a little bit of what we considered as we drew up the TDD. This is the process that we use to draw up all the TDDs. Step one amounts to generating a high-level snapshot of the community and surrounding area from various public and private data sources, things like the Census Bureau, these kind of numbers, taking a look at the area. Step two is coming out and engaging, visiting the community, visiting the station, seeing the community, gathering information, and starting to talk with local leadership on, what are the community's goals and what can we do to help them reach them. Step three was more research and more work leading to a kind of a preliminary draft TDD boundary that we could come back and show to Pines and Beverly Shores and get some initial feedback, which was very useful because we actually put parts of the national park in the TDD, which we didn't actually mean to do, but so we didn't do. So this way we don't pre-done so we finally come out with the draft. And then finally we get to tonight where we can present the first draft and the thinking behind it to all of you. Yeah, here's what was really the impetus to kick the whole TDD process off. When we spoke to Beverly Shores, they told us they were very interested in seeing more business activity, for example, up on US 12. All right. But they were hamstrung by the lack of sewers. They just really can't do a lot of development on septic. We later hear similar stories from Pines, potential condo development that never got beyond the conversation stage because can't do it without sewers. Couldn't be done on septic. So connecting to Michigan City sewers is an absolute prerequisite to any kind of development in both communities. And on top of that, there's the environmental issue. No community this close to the lake really should be on septic. I don't think I need to go into detail as to why. But the number one goal of Beverly Shores Pines TD is to provide funding for this sanitary sewer extension, and everything else sort of flows off of that concept. Next slide. Another second opportunity we looked at is pursuing what they call a National Scenic Byway designation. This is a Department of Transportation program created back in the 90s, and there are funds available through it to communities with a byway. In order to get the designation, there are certain criteria that you have to meet, and then you have to develop what they call a corridor management plan in concert with the community at large. And of course, all of that costs money, and that money could come out of the TDD. If successful, the towns could apply for grants for branding and wayfinding. Slow down. And that would enable you to market yourselves to those passing through as a place to stop, check out, and hey, while you're here, spend a little money. And then finally, once you get the sewer issue addressed, you can work on development within this community-approved footprint. So, restaurants, townhomes, boutique hotel, I've heard all these things, tossed out as possibilities. But ultimately, it's whatever the community decides they would be interested in seeing happen. This enables you to grow and diversify your tax base, create some local jobs, and do it in a way that doesn't impact the essential character of the community. Next. And so here is the district as it stands at the moment. This is again a draft. We're looking for your feedback tonight as to what you like, what you don't like, what shouldn't be, if there's anything that you don't think should be included, if there are more areas you think should be included. As I mentioned, it's 320 acres for the initial one, and this one's at 234. So there's still room to put more property into the TDD if it's so desired. You can see it kind of runs along Route 12 as far as the end of the map. I believe this is Maple Street. Am I correct, Bob? Yeah, that's Maple. So they've got some opportunities there.
Highway 520,
Mm-hmm.
that's what everyone does it for.
Okay.
520.
Okay. And we have some very large section here. I believe some of this is actually in Pine Township. So we also may have this conversation in county. And it goes along 12. Again, we have some other areas. And then all the way down this little triangle here. And finally, it's kind of hard to see, but there's one little green dot right up here on the lakefront. My understanding is that used to be a pizza place. And, with a little TLC from the TDD, it might be again. So that's what we've included in here so far. And there you go. And next slide. So what happens next? We'll run this final checkpoint about halfway through the list.
Dave,
Yeah,
I thought it had to be continuous.
contiguous, it does. Can you go and pop back?
So how can,
Because we can use the right of ways along the road, so technically it stretches down Broadway, but the
Okay.
right of ways don't count in the, against the acreage. So. Okay. Okay, so we're here, community meeting. Once we settle on the final draft boundary, then that will go back to the town councils for approval or for their review again. And ultimately for their approval, we will ask for a letter of support from both the Beverly Shores and from Pines. That's something our board of directors demands. If we don't have, formal recognition that the town wants it, they're not going to approve it. Following that, there are 2 official public meetings held by the RDA board of directors. They hold those in Crown Point. One of the reasons we like to do these information sessions out in the communities itself is because I already travel going to Crown Point once we get to the actual public meeting part of it. So there are 2 public meetings. This is sort of patterned after a redevelopment commission having two public readings on something before they have to, before it gets approved. And if all goes well, once the RDA board approves it, then we have to take it down to the state budget committee, who has final sign off on this. And again, they're gonna ask us if the communities really want it, if we need to demonstrate that. And if they do, then that will, it'll finally be active. Timeline wise, theoretically, if everything went perfectly, sometime this summer, we could possibly do that. Knowing how this process has gone in the last 10 instances, I would bet on the fall. That's all. Next slide. And ahead of all of that, here are the easiest ways to give us feedback aside from talking to us here tonight. You can use the comment form on our Transit Development District website, which is www.nwitdd.com. That is /contact. Anything submitted there goes right to my email. Or you can just cut out the middleman and email me straight up. Or you can mail a comment to our office in Crown Point. Cards, I have a stack of my cards and AJ's cards over on the table there. We got a fax if you want to fax us a comment. And we'll be taking them till the end of January. So next slide. Again, our nwitd.com website. All this will be up there. All this will be
Can you
available.
back it up one slide?
Sure. No problem.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. And then that's good. And then just the final slide there. We can leave it right there. So, anybody have any questions? The team and I are at your disposal. Yes, ma'am.
So, going back to the sewer system, are you saying that if, when you indicated the former pizza place, are you talking about the sewer going all the way down Broadway?
That would be a decision for the town. We're just, at this point, I think we're just looking at putting the sewer in along 12, that main line, to the extent that any more wants to be done, that's gonna be up to that'll be up to Beverly Shore. Yes, sir.
To piggyback on her question, it appeared that you were just showing Broadway as part of the district.
It's
Well, that's not my question yet. So if the sewer was to be extended down Broadway, no properties east or west of Broadway would be able to use the RDA funds to develop that.
As they would be outside the transit development district, so as it stands right now, no, they wouldn't be eligible. But again, there's acreage remaining here, and they can be expanded once to a full square mile, so that's something you could put in there.
Maybe I could comment.
Sure.
The discussions that have been had with the RDA to date by Beverly Shores and Pines is that the first step is to get the sewer hooked to Michigan City and down 12. And then it would be up to each municipality to figure out how they were going to implement it, or if it's possible to implement in their communities, and then how they would fund that. And if the TDD can be beneficial in that, then of course the town would look at that. But it's likely that each municipality would have to figure out some way to fund that project outside of the TDD. But the first step is to get it down 12, so that if there's an opportunity for economic development along 12, they've got access to city sewers. But I think in one of our meetings, we talked about the fact that it would be designed in such a manner that there would be taps along all the right of ways, so that when the time came to expand it, it would be easily expandable.
Thank you. Sure.
Does the district and your agency provide any kind of analytic capacity to help the towns think about what the requirements are for this and
Sure.
how the financing works and things?
Yep, sure, absolutely. Again, Dave Reynolds from Policy Analytics is here tonight, Valerie from MKSK, and we also work with KPMG. So we have, again, that's one of the benefits of the TDD, access to all these resources that we pulled in to actually design them and put everything together.
So do those come at the front end before we necessarily have any increment?
I think we could do something. It depends on, what kind of conversations you want to have, but I don't think that's a big problem. Yeah,
Sure, I'll add a couple of thoughts. There has been already some discussions that have occurred with IDEM and Indiana Finance Authority that runs the wastewater drinking water program for the state of Indiana. The RDA is a state agency, a quasi-state agency for Indiana. So there have been some initial discussions with those two state agencies talking about this process and trying to bring them along to make sure that we're doing it the way that it needs to be done.
They could potentially help too.
And they could help with funding through the wastewater drinking water program.
sure.
Based on what David Phelps just said on the sewer going down to Route 12, isn't funding available to the town to actually do, a loan of some sort or some type of funding to get that project done? Or does the town, I thought David was saying we have to go out independently to find money to do that first.
The sewer project will likely be a combination of funds. So there'll be transit development district funds involved in that. As Dave mentioned, there are grant and loan programs through the state also available. NICD has plans for a maintenance facility in Pines. They want sewers for that. So we may be able to partner with them on at least that section of the project. I know that Jeff has made mention of the INDOT project coming up at the end of this year on 12. We may be able to talk to INDOT while they're tearing up the ground, while they're there, drop a pipe in for us. The same way that we partnered with INDOT on the 12 and 20 bridges several years ago. So essentially, we're going to have to build what they call a capital stack probably to get the project done, so it'd be a combination of funds. Same thing we did with rail projects. But
Something that might help you understand this is, these people up here in the front will help us, the town of Pines and the town of Beverly Shores, research information to gather money to do what we have to do in our towns. Because of joining this and being part of it, we have access to these people to help us out. They're here right now to do the main line and everything, but when we come to do the rest of ours, we can use them to help us find loans, grants, and whatever to help pay for what we have to do in our own communities to get these projects done. So being part of this, we have access to them at their cost.
that's good, yes, yep. All the way back, Robert?
Well, sort of glomming onto that for the town of Pines, as you talked about sewer system, and eventually, of course, town of Pines, like Beverly Shores, would like to connect. I work with the Pines Group, which has been fighting NIPSCO and Brown on the coal ash that's in the town of Pines, and we've reached a point where EPA is telling us that all of the coal ash that's underneath the majority of the streets in the town of Pines, they're not responsible for it, and they're not doing anything, and they're not planning on doing anything about it. One can only wonder if indeed the town of Pines wants to tie in, all those streets are gonna be dug up, and all of that is coal ash. So any thought that goes into the planning of this needs to take that into account. And one would think that once those are opened, then NIPSCO's got to bear some responsibility because it's all their shit. So I just throw that out because without knowledge of that in the planning stages, that could be a real problem.
Yeah, I am aware of the whole coal ash issue. That's terrible. And that will have to be taken into account, and I'm sure that will probably increase the cost of the project, in terms of having to dispose of that and putting a clean bill and stuff. But that's, a couple of years down the line, because we got to get the district established and has to start generating increment before we can really even start to look at things there. But thank you.
Well, I'm not, just piggybacking on what he said, I'm not positive that you really have to put the sewer under the street. You could go adjacent to the street if, if there's property or an easement or something like that. But it is a concern, but I'm not sure you really have to tear up all the streets in order to get that done.
I leave that up to the engineers.
Right, exactly. And another question?
Sure.
The money that, the increase in real estate taxes that are generated by new developments in the next period of time, what is that? Is that 20 years?
It's 20 years. Sorry, I forgot to mention, the transit development districts expire in 2047, David?
Correct.
Okay. So, yeah, and then once that happens, all the revenue just flows back to the town again.
Okay, so for us, it is from whenever it gets started until 2047?
Yeah.
Okay.
2047.
Yeah, 2047 is now.
Was there any thought on expanding the district along Route 20, since there seems like there's 85 acres to play with from 320?
Route 20. I'm not sure how much thought was given to it. I'm not sure how much of it is in either of the two towns.
Yeah, there's not a lot of
Yeah.
it in, it's mostly Pine Township.
Right.
It's not, but-
Right, so if there is interest in some of those areas, again, we could talk to the county, and well, obviously we'll have to, even as it stands, we'll talk to the county. But beyond that,
Go back to the map.
yeah,
I suspect there may be a fair amount of wetlands along 20, just looking at the aerial, but that's the sort of thing we would like to take a look at, overlaying some different information that's gone into how we felt this boundary.
sure.
So,
Yeah, Jeff, you know this area well.
So this is our train station, and this opportunity arose, and because we were told that it has to be contiguous with, but you can be flexible on how you make it contiguous. That's when we said, why don't we include the Pines? And because here is the sewer hookup is right here, and right here is where, Nifty is planning to put their shops, and they've already said they want sewer, so it has to come across the county line to get to here anyway. And so why don't we include all this? Then in some of our other conversations with the Pines, they included this, which is 520, so RJ's is like right here. And the park is right there, I think. And you know, in one of their maps, they had way too much of the national park, because this is the campground, and they included this, and they also included, so this is Pine Township, as is this, but this is the Helen's Hot Live and Otherwise is right there. And because it's a potentially redevelopable parcel that is close enough in their mind that it can be directed to the train station, because it is really, the legislation is based around this. You know, we've talked to the Blumenfelds, and they're not sure that they want theirs in there or not, but it's easier to put it in and have nothing happen to it than to try to get it in later, because we only get one time to expand it. And so we could put in all of Val's stuff, or, you know, other things that that the Pines wanted. Beverly Shores were really kind of stuck. Initially, they had left off John's triangle, and we had them come down and include that, because he's talking about developing. You know, it would be great to get it all the way down here to the USGS, but it, so far, we haven't gotten it, figured a way to get it down there. The town does own a little bit here, but it's pretty small lots. And it, you know, it gets stretched, but if the logic of the sewer is that it's really hard for either community to develop any meaningful, commercial activity or residential without sewers. And everybody on the team has seen that, and then this TDD is a way of leveraging all these resources that the Pines doesn't have, and Beverly Shores. We don't have city engineers, we don't have, city planners, we don't have a lot of things. And, but this is a really cool opportunity without losing control. So nothing would happen in the Pines without the Pines saying, yes, we want that, same with Beverly Shores. This little green dot, if Beverly Shores doesn't want it, it goes away. This is a draft map, but now is the time to say, I want this in, I don't want this in, and finagle this, because then we're gonna say, yep, that's the map, and we're gonna go down the state. And to Dave's timeline, what we were shooting for was originally last year, which didn't happen. And then our hope is that this will be approved by May by the legislature. I know that's absolute optimism, but that's what we're shooting for. So that's why we're having a meeting now, so we can have more meetings, finagle this, get it the way we want it, and get it down there for them to approve it. Because it doesn't happen until it is approved. Then, once it's approved, as Bud said, we have access to their expertise. How do we do this? How much is it gonna cost? What is it, all these things that we can get help with. But we stay in control the whole time. But to me, looking at it like that and sort of the timeline and imagination, if there's more, but it was the Pines that said, why don't we include 520? And so, the little hotel there and RJ's and all that, so what happened is, because it's in this year, so whatever the value is, it's January 1 of 2025 is their starting point. And that's what we missed last year, but that's okay. But right now, so then if somebody if we get this locked in and somebody buys RJ's and puts up something else, whatever its increased value is worth goes towards this project.
Jeff, back to his question though about Route 20, what we did, I think, and the RDA people will tell us, but I think we set ourselves up to have the connectors, so we're on both sides of 20, so that means we have to be able to go either direction on 20 if something were to come up and have a connector. Same thing with Lakeshore County Road, we should be able to go down, to Old Pine School or whatever's down there that might be able to be developed. Again, that's Pine Township, but, we've established the connector, that doesn't count as part of the acreage, but still gets us to that, to be able to skip around, I think that's what I'm trying to say.
And so the Pine School was brought up, and that's like here.
Yeah.
And so far, it's not on the map, but like this, as David was saying, the green dot would be here, and Lakeshore County Road, or Brown Road, or whatever road you want to call it.
My property is just south of John's Diamond. Okay, I'm just on the other side of Quigley, and technically unincorporated Pine Township. And I don't want to rain on John if he's going to develop it. Let's say the legislature gets their head out of their keister and he puts in a dispensary there. And I don't want it. Do I have any say? Because I am not, as I say, I'm not Beverly Shores, I'm not Pines, I'm unincorporated Pines. What say do I have in that? Because I've got about an acre back there. And I'm not opposed to right development, but if it's gonna infringe on my property rights, I think I should have a voice in this also.
So my naive answer would be that you always have a say in it. You have to.
Yeah, if I have a vote, I can have a say in a lot of things.
Yeah.
But if I have no weight, my voice is worth nothing. So I am just on the other side of Quigley. In what my buddy Scott here calls the patch. All right? And there's like 5 or 6 houses back there.
Okay, so back here.
Right back there, right on the other side of Quigley.
Okay.
But if he puts in a dispensary, or a gas station, or a high-rise hotel, I'm screwed.
So,
Well.
Jeff, I can.
Yeah.
So that is a typical planning and zoning question.
I'm sorry, what?
So that's a zoning question. So what we're talking about is more of a finance vehicle. When you're asking a question about specific land use, those are all going to be dictated by, if both those properties are unincorporated Porter County, then they're going to either be allowed or disallowed depending on the zoning district. So for example, if it's currently zoned agricultural, residential, if they're looking to do any type of commercial development, it would require a zone change by state law.
He's already got that zone. It's multi-zone for business and residential. It's already there.
So whatever is allowed by right is, those people are allowed to build. What we're talking about more or less is the actual transit development district. That question really is if it's unincorporated Porter County, and we can certainly connect you with the folks at the planning and zoning department for Porter County, but that would be something that they have jurisdiction over.
Okay, so back to what I said, so if something happens, I don't have a say, right? Unless I go through them.
Well, if it requires public.
I'm not sure.
No, I got an answer. Having worked in local government, doing planning and zoning, you can't, although in Illinois, so I don't know if it's slightly different in Indiana, you could show up at a public hearing if there was a hearing required. Let's say by right, he can put in a convenience store, but if he wants to do the boutique hotel, it needs some sort of variance or a zoning change. You might not live in that local government, but you can still show up and have your voice heard at a public hearing. The people on the body making that determination may weigh your concerns differently than they might people within their town, but then maybe another vehicle is, do you want to be incorporated? So there are some threads to pull on there, but also to AJ's point, that is something that continues to happen at the local jurisdiction and within like your everyday planning and zoning, which is different from the TDD process.
Okay, well, it concerns me when you use, they may listen to you, like they should do this, but it's not a shall. So
That's accurate.
that's not, I understand.
That's fair, yes.
Yes, sir.
Just curious, when Jeff, you were up and you were talking about the South Shore, it's a piece of property that they want sewer, and that, you know, the determination already exists up there for the Michigan City sewer system. I was just curious to know, is that adequately sized already to handle all of what's being discussed, including expansion into both towns? Or would all of this necessitate Michigan City to basically run new from their treatment facility there to handle that?
Sure.
You go.
Yeah, there's been discussions with Michigan City as well, and they say that they can handle this capacity.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that, this helps Michigan City from the standpoint of the prisons leave.
Right.
And so that's a big user of their sewer system, and so their capacity is gone. Be able to handle this.
Yeah. Thanks.
So the money that's generated in taxes over the years that come back into the community, that's really just potential money until a project is defined, and then money can be taken from that to give it? Or does that really come back in cash to the town?
Dave, do you want to try this one? As I understand it, the funding for as the incremental tax dollars are generated, they come to the RDA. The RDA by statute has got to put them in a separate bank account, so that we have a separate bank account so that for license TDD. And so we hang on to those funds until they're requested by the community. And then from them, that's where those funds come from.
So does that answer the question?
Not completely.
Yeah, ask the question again.
Yeah, okay. So they're in those accounts, as he said, but do you just request the money? Do you have to have a specific project to say, okay, now we want to do this, we need the money for it, and then you approve it and say, okay.
We have a draft, what we call a TDD program guide. We've shared it with the towns, Beverly Shores and the town of Pines. And it talks about the process of how the communities get access to those dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it's an application process where the town has to come and request the funding.
Mm-hmm. So at the end of the period, let's just say it's 2047 or something like that, and there's a couple $1 million left in there, it goes to the state, or do we get a lump sum?
It wouldn't go to the state. It would be Dave mentioned that memorandum of understanding or agreement that the RDA would enter into with each of the towns, that would address what happened, and I'm not committing the RDA, but it would be dollars that would be coming back to the community.
Okay.
But it's not gonna go to the state.
Basically, the town needs to just stay on their toes to say, okay, we can get more money if we just create another project, and it would be good for us to do this project here, and then, request the money.
Yeah, from my perspective, the town should look at that as look at the RDA and the TDD, as Dave was saying, as a resource to move projects forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's a funding source for projects that the community wants.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Dave talked about the RDA board taking action on the project, the RDA board isn't necessarily taking action on the project. They're making a determination of whether that funding would come into the project.
Mm-hmm.
The decision on a project, whether it moves forward, is completely up to the town.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Either town.
The question on the Burns Harbor project, did the harbor, whatever they did down there, that had to be in the TDD before you could get funds to do it, right?
Burns Harbor is not a TDD.
Not a TDD.
Pardon?
Burns Harbor is not a TDD.
You mean Portage?
Well, Portage,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, the Portage was a grant from the RDA. That was under one of the state legislature initially gave us 4 areas to concentrate on, one of which was shoreline restoration. And so the funds that we got over the first 10 years included not just the 17.5 million that we get locally, but an additional 10 million a year from what was called the Major Moves Fund. That was the money from the 99-year lease of toll road. So we had basically $27.5 million a year, and we could do grants, and we did a whole bunch of grants for the Marquette Park East in Gary, George Beach in East Chicago, Wolf Lake in Hammond.
So that was not a TDD?
No, that wasn't a TDD. That was just, they did.
What I'm kind of getting at is like the little dot you have down by the lake, is there an advantage to the town to make that a bigger dot to be able to say, if we create a project for down by the lake, that it could happen, does it have to be defined within the TDD in order to be able to get the money to do something?
Yeah.
Okay.
The TDD funds can only be spent in the TDD,
Yes,
so if you want a bigger project down there, you'd have to expand the TDD. So.
I'll let you bring that one up, John.
Okay.
Let's see if we have any questions in our chat. All right.
Ronaldo said sounds amazing.
Okay. The slides will be available for viewing as soon as I can get them up on our website.
I put them up there a couple of
Excellent.
times.
Oh, thank you.
They said they didn't see them. If it was put up there before they signed on, so I put it on a couple more times.
Excellent. All right, well. All right, folks, last call. Any questions? Okay.
Yeah, I have one question just for clarity.
Sure.
Back to the map. I think it's obvious on the north side of 12 that the district runs to the right of way through the railroad. On the south side, is that like the depth of properties that border 12? Is that the intent?
Yeah, that would follow the property line, so it might be just the one, or even if there are two properties deep, especially if they're owned by the same person, where you get the kind of wiggle is the depth of a property.
Okay, thank you.
And just to note, the station itself is also in the transit development district. There are no plans to do anything to the station. It's a beautiful station. We absolutely love it, but by statute, the station has to be part of the TDD, so that's why the station is there.
But it could take part in funding.
Yeah, you could use TDD funds on the station, yes.
Just to clarify too, let's say hypothetically, we wanted to advocate for changing boundaries. What is the process to do that, or what?
Again, just tell us what changes you
Do a
do.
comment.
Yeah, just do a comment, let us know, and we'll collect all of those, and we'll get those off to Beverly Shores and to Pines, and,
Or you could bring it to us too.
Yep.
And then we'll present
Nate, you should introduce
it either
yourself.
way.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm Nate Aldrich. I'm chair of the Pine Township Advisory Board.
okay, so nice to meet you.
Just, do you have any recommendations to the officials of the town in terms of thinking ahead to what type, zoning issues they might consider in order to identify the types of things that they want to have happen along this? Because right now, you can do, in the zoning of Beverly Shores, you can do very little along Route 12 according to, all kinds of things. But I mean, so I mean, the town could use a city planner, number one, I think, in order to
Right.
give guidance on what would be a reasonable density of condominiums, townhouses, or something like that, I would assume, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And that would be something that we would bring MKSK in to do for us. They've actually done a bunch of zoning work for a number of our other communities, thanks to a grant that maybe we got from the federal government. So yeah, we can come in and we can take a look at that, and we can bring them in and take another look at that.
No, that's great. So,
Yeah, take it into you as well.
and, okay, well, that's great. So, but that's not available to anybody until you actually, it's all done, or it's all defined. And then you can start requesting people, right?
I think that's the plan.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I was itching my head.
Oh, okay. All right, going once, going twice, Dave?
I just want to, whoever was the Pine, or the Pine Township. I'd like to talk to that.
Okay. All right, well, thanks to everyone again for coming tonight. I hope we answered your questions. If you have any more, again, drop me an email, letter, fax, however, my cards are right over there on the table. Good night.
Thank you.
My salary, I'm in her later, so I am.